see. Jesus is all right with you. Jesus is all right with me.
He's all right with me, too. At least for the next hour while Bill's here.
Well, Jesus was a Jew, you know.
And his bar mitzvah in Long Island.
All right.
I know all about it. So, at the very best Shalom Shul, actually, in Woodmere. You didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't.
Well, Bill knows that.
But, Mazel tov to Jesus. In the studio, Sid.
Yes.
Back on Bernie and Sid on 77 WABC is the always outspoken, very, very intelligent, courageous president.
Very likable.
Very likable. President of the Catholic League, our friend Bill Donohue. Good morning, Bill Donohue.
How you guys doing?
We're doing great. It's a pleasure and an honor. We love having you here.
Oh, I love being with the boys.
And you know this because you probably heard this a billion times already, but every time we say we book you, the guys in the production room go, "How'd you get Phil Donohue? That's amazing." I thought, but a million times, right? Always, right?
I knew Phil. I've known him, going back to the 1990s when I did his TV show. And when we first met, I told him on air that I am not related to you either ideologically or biologically. I once got his car by mistake coming out of MSNBC, and the driver said, "I thought it's supposed to be Phil Donohue." I said, "I know why I'm in his car. I usually get a jalopy." I said, "Don't turn around. Let him get the nice car to Park Avenue."
Yeah, he's actually a self-hating Catholic, is he not?
There's quite a few of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. So Bill Donohue is here because he has a new book out. It's called Unmasking Mother Teresa's Critics, which it kind of is a head scratcher. It would be like somebody criticizing, say, Abraham Lincoln or Martin Luther King. You would think, anyway, with Mother Teresa. But yes, Mother Teresa has critics out there. So Bill Donohue has actually put together a book called Unmasking Mother Teresa's Critics, and one of the lead critics from way back in the day was this the British the half a drunkard, a nice guy though. Bill Donohue liked him. Was Christopher Hitchens?
Yes.
Yeah. And so anyway, tell us, Bill Donohue, what possibly could be the animosity towards the Mother Teresa? What could motivate that?
Well, Christopher was the guy who really began it more than anybody else, and he was fun to debate, I have to say that. He was a sloppy scholar. He wasn't interested in research and checking the facts, but he was fun to debate. But after Christopher, a number of other people came along, including some Canadian professors. And basically, if you boil it down, what is it that's driving these people? I can get into some of the specifics, but fundamentally, they are people who are on the left, socialist left, and of course they are militant atheists. Every single last one of them. Now look, I have a lot of atheist friends, quite frankly. I don't care if you're an atheist. You can be an atheist and a great person. You can be a left winger and be a good person. But when you put the two together though, and in kind of an vindictive way, why would they attack her? Number one, because they didn't like the idea. They thought it was a myth. Altruism. They object to the idea that there are people who would self-give of themselves to others. They believed, in fact, that should come from the state. In other words, government should take care of the needy, not private people, and certainly not people grounded in Catholicism.
But she actually ran a facility in Calcutta, one of the worst cities in the world, impoverished cities, for people who were dying. It easily demonstrable that she was helping people. Sacrificing herself. She was living with them in this poverty. So, how could they make that case? Well,
there was a guy by the name of Dr. Arup Chatterjee from India who objected to the fact that she gave Calcutta a bad name. It's like blaming the cops because, they work in a high crime neighborhood, that therefore there's a lot of crime there. As far as I'm concerned, I guess then these people, morticians give funeral homes a bad name. Right. Look, there's a lot of poverty there in Calcutta. That's where she went. She went there to deal with these people. She ran homes for the children. Children who were malnourished, people who were homeless, kids who were survived abortions, physically and mentally handicapped. She ran asylums, settlements for lepers, people whom nobody would take care of. And when she came to New York, she took care of our lepers. What I mean by that, she opened the first hospice for AIDS patients in New York City, and she was heralded by Mayor Ed Koch for doing so.
Which, by the way, Cardinal O'Connor in New York City used to go to that same AIDS hospice and wash the AIDS patients. And what was he rewarded with? People went to St. Patrick's Cathedral, the gays, and threw condoms at him.
I got to say, though, but none of this is going to sound unfortunate to both you guys, none of this surprises me. I think we live in a day and age now where people are so cynical, so angry, so mad, that even something like this, like how could you ever have an issue with Mother Teresa? I got to tell you, Bill, Doesn't surprise me.
Well, I think you're right, Sid. Let me make an analogy here because she's a hero to the whole world. I mean, she was voted the 20th century's most admired person, even eclipsing Martin Luther King, who was a great man. But
I think Imus came in third. Is that right?
But I'll tell you, I just saw this thing the other day, and I have no dog in this fight. All these attacks on this great swimmer, Michael Phelps. All these people are saying, he's not the greatest athlete of all time. He didn't fight against anybody like Ali. He didn't do this. He wasn't a great golfer. We don't want to allow great people to be great anymore. We have to always seek to take them down a notch.
I think people are so, for the most part, mired in their own misery and mediocrity that it depresses them to see somebody excel. And the only way they feel better, the only way is to make it seem as if that person is no better than them.
I think that's a very good psychological insight. I think that's a great observation because how else would you explain this?
Very good, Sidney. Now, listen, back to Mother Teresa.
No, that's what 2 rehabs will get you, by the way, Bill.
Some of the criticism of her was because she was against contraception and abortion. So in their minds, some of the critics, they say, look, you perpetuated the poverty by not allowing people to stop having kids. So you're part of the problem, Mother Teresa. And Christopher Hitchens, who, by the way, was an atheist, he happened to be pro-life.
Yes.
So it was kind of odd that he would be of that mindset as well.
Exactly. And who also picked up on that are these Canadian professors, too. Look, according to their logic, and Christopher said that if you want to empower a woman, you have to leave them these reproductive choices. Well, then China should empower a lot of women. Because in China, they not only take care of the kids in the womb, they care of the kids outside the womb in terms of female infanticide. Now, why is it that China has the highest female suicide rate in the world? It's because these women are forced to abort their own kids. So, abortion is not the way to women's empowerment. And if that's the way to get rid of poverty, then I suppose you could get rid of anybody between the ages of 1 and 3, and you'd really cut down on the population problem.
See, when you say it's not the way to cure it, I like that. I don't like it when words like murder, right away, because I have to be pro-choice. Okay, what do I know? And then when a woman, of course, has the abortion, she's committed murder. To me, that's where it gets a little rough, Bill.
Okay, yeah, let me just ask you one thing. What is she aborting?
She's aborting a fetus, which is not yet. I know you're going to give me scientific. The fact is, after 2 months or 3 months, and I've read all that stuff. I've also read different reports at different months where the baby is actually alive, but it depends when she's aborting it. Let's do that, okay?
There's a woman by the name of Gianna Jensen who testified before the House subcommittee on this issue here in the last year, and she talked about she's pro-life. Now, there's a reason she's pro-life. Her grandmother ordered her mother to kill her in an abortion, and she survived. It was a botched abortion. Now, what would you say to her?
I would say, thank God it worked out that way for you.
Well, I think so too.
But I could also, for that matter, show you the child or the person that, because of the pressure of pro-life, had the baby, or maybe they just wanted to have the baby, and that kid now is living in destitute, is depressed, wants to kill itself because the mother never should have had a child in the first place.
Well, shouldn't we at least leave that up to the child as opposed to making the decision for her?
The child going to make his or her mind up at 2 months old.
I used to work in Spanish Harlem, and a lot of people used to say, well, these kids are deprived. In fact, they are deprived, but you know what? They were glad to be alive, and they should make that decision. Hopefully they won't.
How do you think Kaylee Anthony feels today? Well, she's dead. She can't feel anything. But fact is, her mother was a teenage pregnancy who wanted to do coke and drink and bang everybody in sight, and they found that kid dead in a parking lot in Orlando.
There are some terrible situations. I'll be the first one to grant that, but I don't think the answer is to take an innocent life. That's what I'm talking about. Now, in Mother Teresa's case here, Christopher Hitchens was personally pro-life, but yet he had such an animosity against her because he was such a socialist and didn't like the idea of somebody helping somebody through a religion that overrode his concerns about life. And that's what I found disturbing about him.
And an example of the extent of the venom of say, other people on the left and Christopher Hitchens towards Catholics. For example, he actually is quoted in the book as saying by you, quote, "It's a shame there's no hell for the bitch to go to," unquote, talking about Mother Teresa. Wow. And then you go on to say that we're talking with Bill Donohue from the Catholic League. His new book is Unmasking Mother Teresa's Critics. So he said that. But you say he apologized to you afterwards.
Yes, he did. He got on the phone and he said to me, I shouldn't have said that. And we agreed, he was smart about the Islamofascists too. That's where we agreed about the radical Muslims out to kill us. He was not naive about that. He also liked to drink, but so do I. But unlike Christopher, I have some breaks, and the poor guy never knew when to put them on.
No.
I did offer to buy him a drink after that, and he said, "Bill, we'll have a couple of pints of Guinness." But no, in all honesty, the poor guy wound up with cancer, and he died at the age of 62, a pretty ugly death.
Pretty sad. Yeah, he was a drinker and a smoker. I mean, you would see every
right, and he's also
interview.
a switch hitter. Can I say that?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
In fact,
absolutely.
He went both ways.
Well, sometimes when you drink and smoke, those things happen.
Well, I drink a lot, and I don't smoke anymore, and I only went one way.
So, but how about the women? You don't like the women?
like the
No,
girls?
just kidding.
I love the Oh my God!
Listen, I got to be honest. It was this is the second time you've been in studio with me and Bernard, and you and Bernie have a long-standing friendship. And I remember you being on with us on Imus 15 years ago.
Yes.
I have to tell you that spending St. Patrick's Day you were in here that morning, the day of St. Patrick's Day, is a memory. I'm telling you, I will never forget. It was so special to have you here on St. Patrick's Day, not because of your beliefs or your religion, but because you can drink.
Oh yes. And when I was in the Air Force, we used to do table-to-table chug-a-mug during the Vietnam War, and for 4 years I never lost once.
Wow.
Never lost once.
I beat every guy. People would say, "Bill, this guy came in from Missouri last night. He's down at the Airmen's Club. He's pretty fast." I said, "I'll meet you there tonight." And everybody had all their bets down, and whoever lost on which guy you were rooting for had to buy the pitchers for the rest of the night. I was loaded all the time.
Listen, even the best drinkers, though, have had that one night. I was a pretty good one. I wasn't a Hall of Famer, but I did go to rehab twice. But I had that one night at 14 years old where they're still picking carrots out of my friend's window because that was the first time I blew chunks. Bill Donohue, the great drinker that you are, there had to be a time when you threw up.
Yes, actually, quite frankly, that was a lot long ago. Probably about a week and a half ago.
Bill Donohue's sitting here in the studio with us. He's wearing a Coors Light hat. And by the way, not exactly breaking stereotypes, but you know what? We don't care.
No.
We Irish people, we don't care. we like our drink. So you know what? Screw you and screw everybody else.
I'm Jewish. We like to drink too. We just drink different. You guys like beer. We like booze.
I'll tell you the best way to drink sometimes I believe is on an empty stomach. There's nothing tastes better than than a good 24-ounce can, oil can of Foster's on an empty stomach, and man, does it go straight to your head.
And man, you may have to reach for the vomit bag after that one.
Well, that's true. I mean, you can't have two or three. One or two, maybe.
No.
But listen, finally, Bill Donohue, before we move on to other topics, we're going to hold you over because you are fantastic. So many things to talk about. Your book is Unmasking Mother Teresa's Critics. And finally, one of the other criticisms was that she was a fraud, that towards the end of her life, she actually renounced Jesus and her belief in Jesus. You addressed that in the book. Tell us, Bill.
Well, she did say that for about 50 years, she didn't feel the presence of Jesus. She never stopped believing in Jesus. Otherwise, she wouldn't go to the Eucharist every single day. And this is where Christopher and I also had it out on TV about this. He said, no, she gave up her belief. And she didn't give up her belief in anything. There's a difference between feeling the presence of Jesus and believing in him.
What is the difference?
Well, the difference is that you may feel called, for example. She felt a call within a call going way back, and she felt that Jesus was literally speaking to her, asking her to go to Calcutta and tend to the poor. She didn't feel like she had that personal kind of exchange in subsequent years.
Now, before you break here, Bernard, and bring it back for another segment, I will tell you, I'll be honest here. A Jewish boy growing up, was bar mitzvahed, all that stuff. Plenty of Hamish in my house, okay? But as an adult now, I struggle with God. I struggle with it. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to give you the opportunity, Bill Donohue, the opportunity to talk me off the ledge and make me finally believe without any hesitance that God is with me, loves me every single day. Can you do that?
Well, I can tell you one thing. We all have faith. You wouldn't have gotten here today if you drove unless you had faith in your brakes. We all have faith.
I took the train.
Oh, we took the train. Yeah. Now you really have faith that the Long Island Railroad's going to work. That's some soup. Now you're closer to joining us altogether. No, I mean, look, you can't prove these things. I can't prove it on a blackboard, and that's the problem with a lot of professors. Everything has to be proven on the blackboard. These same professors who don't believe in God believe in their utopian schemes, which are obviously unprovable. In fact, when they try to exercise them, it winds up in a bloodbath called the French Revolution. So I'd play it safe. Yeah. You know the old adage about, if I'm not sure whether there's God or not, I better play it safe just in case I'm wrong.
Okay. You play it safe.
Play it safe.
Bill Donohue on the Bernie and Sid Show on WABC. His book is called Unmasking Mother Teresa's Critics. Bill Donohue, we're going to keep him over. We're going to talk Trump, de Blasio, Muslims with the always outspoken and very entertaining and likable Bill Donohue on Bernie and Sid back after this.
Where New York comes to talk. 77 WABC.
This is Rabbi Shmuley. Tell me, you guys all sugar? You nuts? You're not listening to Bernie and Sid? Put that dial back right now.
To accomplish your goal, you must state a mission. The support networks for radical Islam in this country will be stripped out and removed one by one, viciously if necessary. Viciously if necessary. Those who are guests in our country that are preaching hate will be asked to return home immediately, and if they don't do it, we will return them home.
Back on Bernie and Sid on 77 WABC, we're joined by the esteemed, always outspoken and entertaining and very cerebral, intelligent.
Love him.
Am I overdoing it?
No, keep going.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
No.
Bill Donohue is in the studio. His new book is called Unmasking Mother Teresa's Critics. It's a great read. We talked about it last segment. You just heard Donald Trump, Bill Donohue,
right.
on, what is with the lefts? For example, Donald Trump yesterday, he came out, he's against he's going to have a sort of a litmus test, or actually it's an ideological test similar to the one in the Soviet era in the 50s that we employed when people were coming in from Soviet Union. And what it does essentially is he's going to ask if you hate gays, do you hate women, do you hate Jews, that kind of thing. What's wrong with that?
To me, it doesn't make any sense because all these people will do is lie.
They'll lie.
They're going to lie.
That's true, but here's the thing.
They're going to lie.
No, but here's what he said. They'll go to your social media past. And they'll look into you. Now, for example, Assyrian refugees, you can't do it. That's why they shouldn't be allowed in. But as far as these people coming in on visas and stuff, for example, I'll give you an example. That's a
lot of manpower, Bernie. A lot of hours. A lot of hours.
This woman who they're celebrating at the Olympics, the Muslim fencer, she wore a hijab, and they think it's the greatest thing since Martin Luther King or whatever it is. They're celebrating her left and right, and you would think they would say. Remember the old narrative. The old narrative was women's sexuality empowers them. Now they're celebrating something where women seem to be oppressed. They have to cover up, but that's another thing. She has a social media history of bashing Israel, an anti-Semitic social media history, which, by the way, she was on CNN this morning. They neglected to mention once again. But it's that type of thing that they can look at. And perhaps
but she'll get into the country, though. I mean, she could bash Israel. Doesn't mean she's collecting arms to kill them. Are you going to stop? In other words, you could dislike somebody. Are you going to stop them from going into the country?
If they have something that says I support Sharia law, or
that's different.
Or Americans are scum, or she doesn't have that. I'm using her as an example.
I got you.
She has a social media history which they choose to ignore, and she's American, not subject to this. But I am using that as an example of how you can vet people.
I do agree with Trump that we need a better job in screening. And I think if anybody who looks like a security threat, we automatically deny that person until it's proven otherwise. And what we do right now is we let everybody in, and we don't even have any records on anybody else. So, see, Trump has made tremendous progress in getting the American people to rethink things. I don't think you have to go to this step, though, when you get into the idea of ideas. I mean, if the left gets a hold of this, they'll say, well, if somebody says anything nice about Catholics, maybe that's a hate crime or something. I think it's better to stick with security issues, and there's a lot there. And I applaud Trump for focusing on it.
He has done a good job bringing up things. I'll give him that. I'm anti-Trump, but bringing up immigration, bringing up these things, I got to give him credit for that. But I will say this, being the religious man that you are, is God omnipotent?
Well, of course.
Okay, God fixed just about anything, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Even God can't help Donald Trump win this election.
Well, there's somebody called Hillary Clinton, who may help him out yet a little bit. If there's more emails to come.
It's funny you say that because he called her the devil a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
So Bernard is more religious than me and smarter. I'll admit that. So, but I went back and did some research, and I found out that in the Old Testament, that the devil and God are basically the same. That they, that in terms of how they feel about people, how they feel about what's going to happen, all that pestilence and pessimism. So in the end, if in fact that's true, then the devil for Donald Trump becomes the God for Ron Kuby.
Let's not forget that little passage there where in the New Testament and Jesus smashes the head of the serpent. I mean, now we don't want to do that to Ron Kuby. We love Ron Kuby.
Yes, we do. He's actually a good guy. But yes, Hillary Clinton is the unifier of the right for sure. Bill Donohue in studio, Bernie and Sid. We have to take a break for the news. Bill, you're going to hang out with us the next segment. We're going to talk Bill de Blasio and more.
Oh, my favorite mayor.
Et cetera, et cetera. Back on Bernie and Sid after Nome of the News.
77 WABC.
Love the song.
My sweet Lord.
Yes.
Back on Bernie and Sid on 77 WABC. We're sitting here in studio, joined in studio by the great Bill Donohue from the Catholic League. His new book, Unmasking Mother Teresa's Critics. And it's an excellent read. It exposes the fraud of people who actually can muster up the nerve to criticize a great woman like Mother Teresa. Unmasking Mother Teresa's Critics. We talked about it earlier, but I'd like to ask Mr. Donohue now. It's Bill, when an old priest is accused by somebody of an old crime back in something horrible back in the 80s or something, it's front page news on the New York Times. Public school teachers, it's almost epidemic. They're accused almost daily. You don't see it on the front page of the New York Times. You have in the Hasidim community, you have rabbis. It never makes the front page of the New York Times the way it would with a Catholic priest. Let me ask you, the question is, does the New York Times care more about Catholic boys than they do about, say, little Jewish boys?
They don't care about the kids at all. They care about the victimizer, not the victim.
See?
It's all about the messenger, so to speak, and that's why they cherry pick. And that's why this woman, who is still the Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, Kathleen Kane, was convicted yesterday on 9 counts and felonies and perjury twice. She's still the state Attorney General. She went after the Catholic Church here just a few months ago about some alleged molestation which took place during World War II. I mean, this is astounding. She didn't go after any other group, just the Catholic Church.
It seems to be a pattern. It seems to have been a pattern for a long time, and we're on to it. But I would ask you this, too. You made news a couple of years ago when you said it was essentially a gay scandal in the Catholic
absolutely.
Church, because it had to do with post-pubescent boys,
right,
as opposed to pre-pubescent, there's a difference. You tell us about that.
Yes, 100% of the victimizers in the Catholic Church, of course, were male. They were priests. 81% of the victims were post-pubescent. That is to say that they were male adolescents. So that only less than 5% were ever pedophiles. And by the way, the figures from last year, I'm talking about July the 1st of 2014 to June the 30th of 2015, shows that there were 7 credible accusations made against 40,000 priests. That comes down to 0.01%. It's not our problem anymore, folks. It was in the 60s and 70s, and it was overwhelmingly gay, and it is still overwhelmingly gay. Now, I'm not saying that being gay is a driven force to make you a predator. That's simply wrong. I am saying that if you find a disproportionate segment of the population is involved in anything, you've got to look at it. A disproportionate number of people in our society who are alcoholics are Native Americans and Irish. A disproportionate number of people who smoke in our society are Asian. And a disproportionate number of people who are priests who have molested males are homosexuals. They're not pedophiles.
Is that the homosexual's fault or the priest's fault?
Well, it certainly wouldn't be the priest's fault, because then you'd find straight guys hitting on the girls. Very little of it. Very little of it.
But you said that the priesthood would maybe a magnet for some of these
If
people.
it were celibacy, then the straight guys should be hitting on the girls, shouldn't they? But they're not.
Right.
It's the homosexual priests who've been hitting on the teenage boys.
The most interesting part of what you just talked about, but I covered this earlier, but I brought this up, was the distinction you're making in terms of pedophilia between the kid and the 14-year-old. And again, this may be because I'm completely ignorant, but I always thought that if you're messing around with a 14-year-old boy, that's pedophilia.
No,
pedophilia. Is there an age difference?
Yes. The American Pediatric Society refers to puberty beginning at the age of 10. Some people might say it's 10 or 11.
Okay.
The thing is that if you're below 10, that's pedophilia. If you're above 10, certainly if you're a teenager, that's homosexuality there. That's post-pubescent. And that's a different kind of a problem altogether. But we're involved in a gay cover-up. You see, that's what it is. We don't want to blame homosexuals for anything, so we lie about it and say that they're pedophiles. The New York Times lies about it every single day when they talk about the pedophilia scandal in the Catholic Church. There never was one. It's been a gay scandal always from the very beginning.
Interesting. Very interesting. Bill Donohue in studio with Bernie and Sid on WABC.
Let me just say one thing to that, though. What seems unfair about that, though, is that I don't know the number of rapes committed in this country, which are heterosexual, which is okay, I get, which is okay in the Bible, if it's disproportionate to that of these homosexual crimes you're talking about. But explain to me the difference. If a guy is out there raping a woman because that's his sexual preference, and the numbers are higher than a guy with a little boy because that's his sexual preference, why does it seem to me like you're more aggravated with the homosexual priest?
Well, because we're talking here about hitting on minors. I mean, if you're an adult and you're 25 and you're hit on by a 45-year-old priest, that's wrong.
But I'm sure there's plenty of rape victims. I'm sure there are plenty of rape victims that are young people. Plenty of them that from the opposite sex.
Well, yeah, but if gays are something like a couple of percent of the population in this country, 1.6%, by the way, according to the Centers for Disease Control, then why is it that they account for a large share of the sexual molestation of minors? There's something else going on here. I think it's because of the sexual immaturity, which is more current in the gay population than it is in the straight population.
Let me ask you this. Bill Donohue in studio with Bernie and Sid. After aiding and abetting the cop haters, Bill de Blasio, he did that when they were protesting in the streets, and he essentially called cops racist. 2 cops were subsequently executed here in New York City. He actually went and hid behind Cardinal Dolan's vestments. He went to church, and even Cardinal Dolan pointed out, he actually stayed to the very end of the Mass this time. He hid behind Cardinal Dolan, the skunk did, and now he's back to calling cops racist, as Bolshevik Bill de Blasio. I mean, what did you think about Cardinal Dolan sort of giving the mayor cover back then after the cops were executed? I didn't like it.
Well, I think it puts the cardinal in a pretty tough spot. I mean, if the mayor of the city of New York says, I'm going to come to Mass and I'm looking for forgiveness, you can't expect that the Archbishop's going to say no. I do agree with you that I think there was an element of exploitation there. But look, I mean, the cops of this country are wonderful guys and wonderful gals, almost to the one. And what's going on, we should go into the public schools and tell the students exactly what's happened in all these cases, Eric Holder and everybody else. In all these cases, the white and black cops have been found to be innocent. They're not guilty. Instead, the reputation is out there. It was entertained at the Democratic National Convention. I am pro-cop, and I'm proud to be pro-cop.
Absolutely. You're right. They had Michael Brown's mother. And, and the
they trot him out.
The Black Lives Matter stoked this violence in Milwaukee by putting out false facts. The cop was black. The kid was armed. And he wasn't shot in the back.
And he had a long rap sheet.
I mean, but not all of these. Let's be fair. I mean, there was a guy shot in Chicago 16 times, a guy shot in the back in South Carolina. But predominantly, you're right. My big issue is, because I'm also very pro-cop, obviously we all are. My big issue is, I don't know how in this country we got to the point where, A, people just burn down stuff, regardless of the facts. Even after they know the facts, they're still burning down stuff. And B, kids who are bad kids, criminals, become the poster child for cities in this country. How'd we get there?
Well, I have a doctorate in sociology from NYU. I've written about this extensively, and I can tell you where the problem comes down to one word: fathers. Where you don't have fathers, you have undisciplined boys. And you have a 77% illegitimacy rate in the black population. There are almost no fathers if you go into black inner city areas. Who's going to discipline the boy? And that it has nothing to do with being race, okay? Boys have more testosterone than girls. That makes them more aggressive. If they don't have a father to sit on them, look out. And if you have a whole neighborhood like that, it could be white, Chinese, black, whatever it is, you're going to see this thing crumble. And by the way, it wasn't that way back in the 1950s when blacks could sleep on the outside on the fire escape when they didn't have air conditioning because there were fathers. There's no more fathers. But you'll never hear Al Sharpton talk about that problem, which is why blacks kill blacks routinely in places like Chicago.
It's cultural and sociological. There's no doubt about it. And the aggressiveness on the part of young males is why they send young men to war. That's part of the reason. And I want to segue now to the Pope. Bill Donohue in studio with Bernie and Sid. First of all, he was recently he's ordered his people to take the homeless to the beach. I mean, he's obviously a nice philanthropic guy, but he does little symbolic things like take the homeless to the beach, and on the way back he feeds them pizza. Very, very nice. But recently he's ordered. He says that we should apologize to gays, women, the poor, etc. What are your thoughts? A lot of people think he's too liberal. What is your opinion on the Pope?
There is a
days?
tendency on the part of this Pope and previous popes as well to reflexively apologize for things. I think we have to be a little careful. I mean, I always feel that you need to apologize if you yourself have done something wrong. But I'm not going to apologize because I happen to be a straight white male Catholic about some things that maybe some straight white male Catholics have done in the past. I don't feel any collective sense of incorporation on that. So I think that the motive is good, but I can't identify with it. I only apologize if I've done something wrong.
So are you a big fan of our current Pope?
I like his spontaneity. I like the fact that he's not politically correct. He's not measured in his words. And he's done a lot of good in speaking out on issues which the media don't want to report on. He does say some things once in a while which make me want to reach for it. Yeah. Yet another.
Right. He's no John Paul II. Let's be honest, okay? He's just not.
He's a good man. He's
nice
ideologically he's from the left. He's a socialist from Argentina. Is essentially what he is.
He's trying to succeed two guys who were first-class philosophical intellectuals in Benedict and JP2.
Last thing. I guess you have to go soon. But can I just say this as a sports fan? Guy goes out there, throws 5 touchdown passes. What's the first thing he does, Bill?
Well, hopefully he doesn't spike the ball.
He thanks God.
Thanks God
today. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Guy goes out there, throws 5 interceptions. What's the last thing he does?
He's very
Thank
selective.
God. So, no, what I'm just saying, I know sports fans always bring this up. They can't stand when athletes go out there and the first thing they do is thank God after a great performance, but you never hear God uttered after a crappy performance. How was that?
But I do like it when a Jewish quarterback throws a Hail Mary.
Bill Donohue on the Bernie and Sid Show on WABC.
Sid Lutman,
we love you, man. We love you, Bill Donohue.
Thank you, guys.
Back after this.
77 WABC.